And it led to Cesaro coming out, and he hugged Heyman, and he said that even though we have broken up, I am not going to let you, John Cena, insult my friend. He said, you're not an athlete. You're a muscled-up walking billboard. You can't wrestle in sneakers. And in fact, you can't wrestle. And so he challenged him to a match, and they had a hell of a match. Great.
Do you think so?
I thought they had a great match.
Okay, I'll say this. The crowd was really into it, and structure-wise, as far as layout, it was excellent. But, I mean, I thought John Cena completely sucked in this match.
Wow.
I mean, it was like, it wasn't like it was one spot, like a botched Hurricane Rana, which in fact happened. It wasn't like the punches sucked, which they did. It wasn't like their mistimed moves left and right, which they did. It was constant the entire match. And I know that people were into it, and I know that there was excitement there, and it built well and all that. So if you're looking at it from just a pure, the idea that sucky guys with the right, and Cesaro was fine. I didn't think he was great. But I mean, I thought this was probably the worst performance by John Cena that I've seen in a match in God knows how long. It was like everything he did. It was like the ugliest offense. Everything was just, the timing was off. He was a step off there. When they tried to do a clothesline spot, somebody was out of position. I mean, from that standpoint, from a technical wrestling standpoint, I thought this was like freaking awful. I mean, God, the last couple, like the crowd was into it, and even when they were doing like the reverses off of stuff, they were still. So much of it looked ugly, other than a few, some of the stuff by Cesaro looked good, but God, everything Cena did almost was ugly looking. I mean, it was just, yeah. I mean, did you watch it? I mean, it's like, I think a lot of people would have thought, well, hey, the crowd's going crazy, and they were, and there were a lot of really cool ideas for spots, which, Cena and Cesaro have done in previous matches that were a lot better, but my God.
I have seen John Cena have 9 million ugly matches in his career. I've seen 10 billion ugly punches. I don't know. I didn't think this was any worse than any other John Cena match I've seen.
The mistimed spots, this was, he usually doesn't have mistimed spots. He sometimes, yes, punches are bad. Every now and then he'll do a move that's a little bit clunky. This was, wrong positioning. I mean, this was like, okay, I'm going to go and take a guy who's a pretty decent worker, and I'm going to take a guy who's like a really crappy worker, and I'm going to be the referee, and I'm going to tell them spot after spot after spot to do in the match, and they're going to go out there and have a shitty pro wrestling match, but because they're both over, it's going to be, the people will go for it because they're both charismatic guys, and it's the first match on the show, and blah, 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 and all that. I mean, I was like, look, I'm a fan of John Cena's, but when he sucks, he sucked. He freaking sucked tonight. I mean,
wow.
I mean, did you watch it seriously?
I did watch it. I thought it was they were calling 9 million spots. There were a couple of botched spots here and there, but overall, I thought, listen, they got the crowd into it. The place went nuts.
I'm not saying that didn't happen. I obviously said it didn't. I can see where people would say it was a good match, but I can't call a match good when one guy is so bad in a match, and he was so bad. And again, I put up with his missed punches and his funny bumps and all that stuff because it's John Cena and I don't expect any more. But, you can't, this was like, I don't know. This reminded me of like watching like an ECW match when it was like, when you'd have these really bad matches with all of these cool spots, but they'd be botching all the spots, and then people would just go at the end, oh man, what an amazing match, and I would go like, it's one of those things where the match doesn't hold up years later, and it's like, well, if it worked in the building, and this did, it worked in the building. I'm not going to knock it in that sense. So if it works in the building, it's a good match. But then by saying that, then you're saying that like Ultimate Warrior's matches were all good or something like that. If they worked in the building when he botched all his spots. So this match, John Cena sucked. The match was pretty exciting though.
This is begging for some sort of front page poll or something like that. I don't know what exactly it would be.
What? You're going to tell me that he didn't miss his spots? You're going to tell me that
he missed some spots, but it was a good match.
I didn't say it was. If the criteria is getting the crowd into it, it was a great match. If the criteria is looking semi-believable, it was a crap match. I mean, my God, I would be shocked if I went to an indie show and saw a match execution-wise that was this bad. I mean, I would just go like, at the local indie. I mean, I guess maybe guys that were really inexperienced, but no. I mean, like, as put on, guys, because most guys, well, I shouldn't say that. There are some guys on indies that will try a lot of moves that they can't do. But that's what John was doing. And it's like, well, he usually can do them. But in this case, on this, God, it was just one thing after another for like 14 straight minutes of the last 2 or 3 minutes. But no, even at the finish, when he was going in and out of those moves, they were still, mistiming stuff.
Well, I don't know what to tell you except that it's probably all downhill from here then, because he ain't getting any better.
No, what? He's one bad night. Now we're going to write his career off.
Well,
I mean,
he's got a lot of injuries, and I think that
this wasn't injuries. This was bad positioning. If it was injuries, I would say, oh God, he's hurting. I know when a guy's hurt. I'm watching G1. And I'm watching all these guys freaking, crying in pain, getting through these incredible matches. This isn't he ain't hurting like those guys. He's not even close. I mean, he's not running to the hospital or anything like that this week. He just missed spots. That's all.
Maybe the problem was you watched all this great G1 and then watch a John Cena match. You're asking for it.
No, well, if that was the case, though, I would say that about every match on the show, and this is the only match that I noticed it. Everybody else, even, the women's tag was not so great either, but I would not expect that to be, so that's a different story.